On this week's episode, we're going to talk about a strong weekend for Sauber, a bounce back for Lando Norris, and a bounce into Max Verstappen for Kimi Antonelli. Hello and welcome to another episode of Back of the Grid. I am Tom and I'm joined, as always, by Chris.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry for catching you off guard with that intro. I saw your reaction. At least you
Good,
appreciate it. As long as one person appreciated it, that's all I ask. But yeah, I think overall a pretty decent Austrian GP to review this week.
Really enjoyed that one.
One of those circuits I think generally gives us pretty good racing anyway, despite it being a short lap. There's usually something interesting to talk about after an Austrian Grand Prix, I feel, and this was no different to that.
I actually think it's a pretty underrated circuit. Like, it does always produce good races. And honestly, I like that it's a short lap. Like I've always said, if you've got a short lap with a few good corners, the cars go around those good corners more times because they're not faffing around in the bad stuff. Like, I feel like a lot of the modern tracks tend to be all like, oh, we're like the longest street track ever and we've got the most corners ever. Like, don't think that's a good thing. Give me a short track with a few absolute bangers of corners. Much prefer that.
Well, yeah, we sort of had a brief discussion about this over the race itself, I think, in Discord when we were all watching it together. And with the exception of like a couple of absolute classics like Spa and Silverstone,
Yeah,
the top end of tracks by length it is not that great, generally speaking.
no.
And then you sort of look at the bottom end of tracks by length, and you get circuits like Interlagos, the Red Bull Ring, Montreal. I mean,
Yeah,
Hungaroring maybe not so much for the racing these days because it is a little bit narrow, but even still, like traditionally, it's been good for racing. I mean, Hockenheim's even down the bottom end of that list since the changes in more recent times, since it stopped going out into the wilderness. But yeah, there's some good tracks down the bottom end of that, I think. And then, but as you get nearer and nearer the top, the tracks that are less and less notable for the great racing, I think.
yeah.
Generally speaking, so I think there is something to be said for that, probably. But yeah, I think we'll start with McLaren. Like very, very strong weekend for them overall. Particularly for Norris, it's very important that he came back from what happened in Canada after that incident and not only performed but also outperformed Piastri in general to close that points gap back down. Pole probably looked a little flattering because it was about half a second in the end, which is a huge gap for somewhere like here. But when you've got the likes of Piastri and Verstappen having their laps essentially compromised, I think one didn't get to start their lap and the other didn't get to finish their lap because of Gasly's spin coming out of the final corner. So the yellow flags affected them in kind of opposite ends of their laps, but affected them nonetheless. So do you think that gap was a little flattering to Norris, but it's a result he needed to get it on pole and to win it from pole and defend a fight from Piastri when he needed to earlier in the race. Like that first stint, Piastri generally looked the quicker of the two and had to do a lot to defend. So yeah, I think impressive from both cars, but like notably important for Norris, I think.
Yeah, I mean, whenever the temperatures like they are there, McLaren are just untouchable. Like, whatever it is they're doing to keep their tyres in the temperature window makes them just leaps and bounds ahead of the rest of the field in those sort of temperatures. But yeah, like, as you say, the pole time, probably a little bit flattering, but even if the other guys had got their laps in, I really find it hard to look past anyone other than Norris for pole. Like, he did look like he was really comfortable and putting in really solid lap times, and no one else had really kind of looked like putting in the sort of time he had. And yeah, just like just a really, really good drive from him. As you say, really good defense. Like, he really had to fight for it. Piastri was really giving it to him, and credit to McLaren for just letting them get on with it. The only time we really heard McLaren talking about the fighting was when Piastri had that big old lock up and just missed the back of Norris's car, which I think when they said like less of that, Piastri was just like, yeah, fair enough. That wasn't great.
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of comments from the F1 TV coverage side of things where I think they were kind of right in what they were saying of that the timing of when they brought that up to Piastri was maybe a little bit off. Like, I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was sort of way after the fact, but also way before he started closing back in again. And I don't know, it felt like a bit unnecessary at the time that they brought it up. But maybe once he closed back in, saying something more along the lines of, look, Oscar, you're good to race Norris, but let's not have a repeat of turn 4 or something like that. Like, just a little subtler. Whereas it was kind of in the midst of his next stint and they were just like, okay, I've been speaking to the pit wall and we can't have a repeat of turn 4, please. But it was like nowhere near him at the time either. I just felt it wasn't necessary at the time. It needed to be said for sure, but I just think there could have been a better way of doing it. But regardless, I think some great racing, even if it did nearly come to a little bit of a negative ending for the pair of them.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know how delayed those messages are, but it just seemed a massive gap before. I guess at that point they were hoping that they just wouldn't be near each other again and they wouldn't have to worry about it. But yeah, I mean, Piastri seemed to be closing the gap towards the end, but I think Norris had what he needed in hand, to be honest. Like, he seems to be able to control that gap well enough, and then until some backmarkers decided to put an end to the fight for them.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of putting ends to the fights, we'll not talk about that specific incident just yet. We'll get to that further on, but I want to talk about fights that were ended before they even started.
Yes.
So the other, I guess, big talking point for this, aside from McLaren's positions, is the whole Max and Kimi incident. So by the end of turn 3, they're both out of the race. Pretty big mistake on Kimi's part. I mean, admittedly, he's held his hands up to it. He knows that it was a mistake on his part. He's not tried to deny that in any way. I guess the thing that's the biggest shame of all this is the fact that it puts an end to a run of 31 races in the points that Max was on. And in the last 76 races, he's only DNF'd. Well, this is his second DNF in that time span.
It's a crazy record.
Which is an immense record to have. And it is unfortunate that it ends that, but I guess
it's something completely out of his control. Especially when, again, all this talk about how he races and is he going to get caught up in instant to get some penalty points, and then he just gets torpedoed out of nowhere. Yeah, I mean, Kimi sort of said afterwards, like, I braked my usual brake. I didn't brake too late, but like I locked up the rears and had to take avoiding action. It's like, well, you kind of did brake too late because you had to take avoiding action. Like, I don't think that's much of a defense.
Yeah.
Not great from him.
Shouldn't have been braking that late going into that corner with so many cars in front of him. Big rookie error, essentially. Like the rookie of Kimi Antonelli shone through in that incident, unfortunately. I mean, back to Max's side, I know this obviously is still very early in the season to be saying that's him out of the title fight now, but realistically, when he's having to put in very major league performances in order to beat the McLarens to begin with, or relying on them being off the pace, do we think realistically that now this gap is dropping to about 61 points from the lead? It is all but between the McLarens now.
Yeah, I mean, it would take a massive turnaround from Red Bull or a series of McLaren disasters for him to get back into it now. Not impossible, but yeah, it's a very, very big mountain to climb for him now.
Yeah. And then go on.
So I will say as well, to Max's credit, like, obviously in the moment of the crash, he was pretty annoyed, but in the interviews afterwards, he was like, we've all been rookies once and people are going to make these kind of mistakes. It's a shame, but it's going to happen. And that's right. Like, you can't forget that, yes, Kimi is in a frontish running car, but he is a rookie and he is going to make these mistakes. And, last weekend everyone was praising him because he picked up his first podium. Couple of weeks later, it's less impressive from him, but yeah. It's going to happen.
Yeah, and on that note, Kimi has picked up 2 penalty points, his first 2 so far in his Formula 1 career, and he will have a 3-place grid drop for the incident come Silverstone, essentially because he didn't finish the race himself, so there was no penalty to be applied during the initial judgment of the incident, I guess.
Yeah, I almost feel like 3 places is a little bit lenient. Like the stewards kind of said, normally we apply leniency on the first lap, but given that it was a mistake that the driver admitted to and he took out a competitor, we're kind of not giving that leniency and landing on a 3-place penalty. Like if they're giving him a 5-place penalty, I wouldn't have been hugely surprised.
Yeah, it almost feels like the 3-place penalty is showing the leniency somewhat.
Yeah.
In a weird way. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not against him having a penalty. I think that doing something about it like they have is exactly right, because yeah, you can't be going into a corner at that long after that long of a straight, braking as late as you would if you were on a quali lap, which is essentially more or less what he was trying to do. We joked about it at the time with Discord when we were watching, but it did feel like he was on the F1 game, had the difficulty turned down, and then went, "Oh, the AI wants to brake here, does it?
Yeah,
I've got to It felt like that kind of situation.
And gain 10 places.
Yeah, not ideal. But
no,
if he learns from it, that's what's important, I think. Yeah, Ferrari. We talk about them next because they were essentially in the best positions after McLaren. They were the second best finishing team. They got a 3-4. They got a guy on the podium. However, it felt like they weren't even there. It's a really weird scenario. They were just in such a no man's land situation where they were very anonymous. Other than the first lap battles, I don't think we saw them that much. The only times we really did see them was through things like typical Ferrari arguments with drivers about strategy, and that was it, more or less.
Because that was weird, that bit of Hamilton team radio, where it's like, what was his initial question was something like, how was he like asking how many laps to go? I think he asked how many laps to go, and the team were like, "Yeah, box this lap," and he was like, "Whoa!" Yeah, I'm asking about that. Like, I can go further on these tires. Like, yeah, cool, box this lap.
Yeah, I think he basically was asking how long he's left because these tires still feel good. Whether they'd already told him to box before that, and that's why he was asking, not sure. But essentially, he was saying like, "I feel good on these hards. I want to stay out." And they then made some sort of comment about the stop for mediums is the fastest race or whatever it was. And Julian Palmer made an absolutely brilliant observation of someone needs to tell Ferrari that he's not the fastest race time that matters. It's the finishing position. Now, technically the two do go hand in hand. Like if you get a faster race time, you're generally going to have a better position. But if he felt like he could stay out and possibly one-stop that race, he would have been the one on the podium, realistically. I don't think it would have played out like that. I think Leclerc would have reeled him in and overtaken him, but an element of it definitely felt like Ferrari essentially saying, heard but not received, as we want to switch the positions back artificially.
Because there was a shot after the race of him looking at the timing screen and then shaking his head as he walked off, and I definitely read that as I could have been on that podium.
Yeah.
All that said, though, like it definitely felt like a step forward for them. They bought some upgrades to the floor, I think the diffuser, as well this weekend, and obviously it's one track and it's quite a unique track, but they definitely seem to have taken a step forward. They were clear second best this weekend. And actually, they've moved up to second in the constructors now as well, like a point ahead of Mercedes, I think.
Yeah, it helps with that, especially with Kimi not finishing the race. That makes a big difference for them there.
And Russell, another person just being kind of in no man's land. He was just on his own for the entire race as well.
Yeah, temperatures. I mean, let's move on to Merc on that note. Like, temperatures probably a little too high for Merc's liking. We know that they tend to do better in those colder races where they've got like kind of the opposite problems to the McLarens, really, where the McLarens can really maintain the tyres in the warmer temperatures, but struggle a little bit more, it seems, to switch them on in the colder. And Mercedes have the flip reverse of that, where the colder races there, or cooler races, let's say, they're able to get the temperature and get performances like they did in Canada. And then the warmer ones like this, they're not as on the pace and not as switched on as some of the other cars.
Yeah, Russell said himself after the race that they're still just nowhere in hot temperatures, and it's been the same problem for like 2 years for them now, and they still haven't seemed to do anything about it.
Not going to bode well for them going into Silverstone if the weather continues as it has here.
I mean Lawson behind Russell was much closer to him than Russell was to Hamilton ahead, which is pretty damning, really, for myself. For the car that won the previous Grand Prix. Like, that's damning.
Yeah, I mean, the temperatures here have been roughly the same as what they've seen in Austria this weekend, like very high 20s to 30 most days over the last few days, with last few weeks even. So it seems to be hovering there, and that is going to probably mean for a very warm Silverstone weekend, unless the predicted rain comes our way, which it's Britain, so who knows?
Yeah.
If I tell you what, out of interest, I know this is jumping ahead a little bit, but if it stays as it is weather-wise for Silverstone, can you see past McLaren?
If it's warm again, no chance of anyone else.
If the rain does come, where would you be putting your money then?
If it does rain, honestly, it's hard to look past Hamilton.
You think?
I
mean, Hamilton in the improved Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sort of a tidbit about Hamilton this weekend that I wanted to bring up later on, but yeah, if there's rain, then that's going to be music to his ears, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Good analysis, Chris. I like it. You mentioned Liam Lawson, so let's talk a little bit about RB. Looked pretty decent most of the weekend, to be fair. And leading up to quali, it was looking like they could both legitimately go through to Q3. So it was a bit of a shame to see Hadjar go out in Q2 like he did. But Lawson managed to go through, and also then one-stopped the race for a sixth position finish, which is his best so far.
Yeah, really well executed one-stop as well. He was the highest finisher that did a one-stop.
Yeah. Hadjar's weekend didn't end that great, ended up with a little bit of damage and finished 12th. So, unfortunately, no points for him. But still looking decent pace for the RB, still looking like a very decent midfield contender. Still getting the results when we expect it to. I think they are probably still one of the more consistent midfield cars. They just need the drivers to be able to pull out that consistency week on week. Like, this is probably the better side of Lawson we've seen this weekend, and it's taken a while to kind of build to that point.
Yeah.
Hadjar, a bit on the flip side, he's had a lot of 6th, 7th, 8th kind of place finishes and been able to get that performance out. Just had a bit of an unlucky weekend. I think what's good for Lawson in this scenario is on the weekend that Hadjar's not been able to finish in that solidly top 10 position, at least Lawson's been able to pick that mantle up and go get that result in Hadjar's absence. So that just bodes well for the team. getting consistent points through the season and obviously continuously building on that.
This is one of the few weekends I can remember where Lawson was generally the faster of the two for a lot of the weekend. And as Sarah in Discord just pointed out, he was the only Red Bull driver to score points this weekend.
Yeah, he was.
Which is pretty damning as well. But yeah, RB just continues to look good. And I should say, Hajar's been doing the business for a while now, and Lawson's been gradually improving all season. And, you know, it was nice seeing the team celebrating with him after these points. It's a career best, I think, for him, isn't it? 6th place.
Yeah, I think it should be, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so, really good drive.
Really good result. Really good result. Now on to probably what is one of my favourite results of the weekend, I must admit, and that is a double points finish for Sauber. Some nice updates for them. Seems to be working very, very well. The cars looked good at different times, surprisingly, in Hulkenberg's hands, but whatever they've done to it seems to have allowed Bortoleto to be able to also unlock that pace from the car. So it just seems nothing but positive. Hulkenberg did have a little bit of a rough start to the weekend and qualified literally last place, which is, I believe, is the first time Hulkenberg's been last on the grid in 3 years or something, I think I remember hearing. Or it might have been 2023, something like that. But it's a long time since he's been there. And considering that in that time he's been in a Sauber and a Haas, that's actually quite an impressive stat to say that he's not been at the back for that long a period of time. I mean, he's probably had more Q1 appearances than he has bottom 5 appearances.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, I'm spitballing stats there and just kind of making them up.
Quite possibly.
If you say it with enough confidence, people will believe it. Or you'll get fact-checked by the comments. Either way, I'm fine with that. But yeah, real good weekend for them, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, such good drives from both of them. And as well, strategically, like, we've kind of clowned on Sauber for just making bizarre decisions a lot of times in the past, but they nailed it this weekend. Like, Hulkenberg was one of the few to start on softs, and he then did 2 medium stints after that. He was the only driver to do soft, medium, medium. They undercut people at both of the pit stops. Just so well executed all round. And Bortoleto was just on the pace the entire race, looking really good. Had a nice fight with Alonso, who happens to be his manager in the closing stages.
The little embrace between them post-race when they finished was great to see as well. Just
and Hulkenberg congratulated him as well. Like, really nice to see. And I saw a clip of Verstappen going over and making a point to congratulate him as well. Like,
I didn't see that one.
For such a newbie to the paddock, he does seem very well liked there. Yeah. And I think Bortoleto is going to have a really good career ahead of him. Yeah,
I mean, Bortoleto's, of all the rookies, Bortoleto is probably one of those that we expected to be one of the better rookies alongside maybe Kimi Antonelli going into it when you looked at the list of rookies. And it was just unfortunate that the Sauber came out of the blocks the way it did. And you sort of thought, well, as good as Bortoleto might have been in F2 and F3, he's probably not going to get an opportunity to show that with this car this year. However, these updates, fingers crossed, look like it could allow him to start doing that. I mean, he's definitely taken advantage of the fact that they've looked strong this weekend, at least. So hopefully they can build on that and maintain some things going into the Audi days ahead of them.
Yeah.
Which should be really good to see. But yeah, really happy with that drive for both of them. 2 drivers that I really like, so it's always nice to see him doing well. Haas, kind of the opposite of what we've expected from Haas a little bit recently.
Yeah, they've been kind of all right this year, haven't they?
They've kind of been all right, but just pouring qualifying and then now getting race pace. It used to be the other way around, where in the likes of Hulkenberg and Kevin Magnussen's hands, you'd see these occasional Q1 glory runs and them getting into decent positions, but then just completely falling off in the race.
Yeah.
This weekend, almost literally the opposite of that, like struggling to get out of Q1, but then picking up a point and then also finishing 11th, 10th and 11th finishes for them. Like, it's an all right result for the race, but it sort of makes you think what could be if they had qualifying together.
Yes, like both the drivers again did a really good job, but they were kind of having to fight back from pretty ropey qualifying positions. But yeah, like 10th, 11th, they finished. They picked up a point again. They're
Yeah.
kind of hanging on in there.
I mean, I guess you could argue that part of that is helped by 4 cars you would maybe consider being ahead of them being out of the race. So I think there's probably
Yeah,
a
that's
little
true.
pinch of salt to be taken with that. But Behrman was racy at times, racing people around him. I can't remember how much of that Ocon got. I feel like Ocon was another of those who was a little anonymous and didn't really see him, and he was just head down making a strategy work, and he sort of benefited in that remit. But
Yeah.
Behrman definitely had a racy race, as they would say.
Yeah, because Ocon did medium hard, which no one else seemed to do. Maybe the hard tyres were just working better on that car than others.
Yeah.
He certainly made it work.
Yeah. Now towards the more bottom end of things, and a few things to talk about there, but we'll start at Alpine. Overall, still bottom of constructors. A pointless race this weekend. Gasly
Again.
had potential and was running all right for a while. Could have maybe done better in Q3 if he'd not had the spin, to be fair, and did affect others, but generally was looking okay. Started on the softs, which meant he was able to do decently, at least in that front pack.
I think he was up to about 6th at one point,
fifth or
wasn't he?
sixth at one point, yeah, depending on where it was in that order. But it was always gonna probably fall away. Like the jumping on the softs to get a good launch was great, but it probably would have only worked long term if there'd been a relatively early safety car that caused everybody to pit, I think. So although we kind of saw that to some degree, it was just too early for them for everybody to be, reacting to that incident between Max and Kimi. So had that been a few laps in, like 5-10 laps in, and teams are then thinking about bringing in the guys on the mediums to get them on the hards a bit early and going like hard for a double stint towards the end and taking a cheaper stop. Maybe that works for Gasly, but with the way it played out, he just ended up going a little bit backwards, didn't he? It wasn't an optimum strategy, really, that one.
Yeah, it's so rough at Alpine at the moment. Like Flavio Briatore keeps saying, the car, the pace was there to have both cars in Q1 and the drivers need to be doing better. And it's like, mate, I really don't think the drivers are your problem right now. Like there's so many more problems at that team at the moment. That the car is, okay, yeah, one of the cars scraped into Q3, but on race pace, they were just terrible. Like they just went backwards. I mean, to be fair, Colapinto had a very ropey race. He should have been doing a lot better. But yeah, tough times at that team. Now, apparently, there's rumours that they're eyeing up Bottas to replace Colapinto next season, which, as the resident Bottas fan, I can think of nothing worse. He needs to stay well away from that team.
I mean, what I will probably say with that is that sounds to me more like something that Bottas's management, aka Total
My
Wolff,
thoughts exactly.
is probably stirring something around to maybe get someone like Cadillac to pull the trigger on actually making a move or something like that. And it comes more from there because when drivers are in this sort of position that Bottas has found himself in, you do get these kind of rumours. I mean, I remember when Sainz was working out what he was doing after the Hamilton replacement announcement came, he was linked with pretty much every single team on the grid at some
Every
point.
week it was a new seat, yeah.
So I imagine it's more to do with that. I can't imagine Bottas fitting into Flavio's way of working anyway.
I can't imagine him wanting to go to a team like that right now. Like Cadillac is interesting because it's a project, something being built from the ground up. Alpine is just a kind of disaster class these days.
Yeah. Dumpster fire.
We should mention Colapinto.
Yes.
Running Piastri off the road while he was trying to lap him, which was, I think he picked up some penalty points for that. rightfully so. That was just bizarre. Like, he just clearly wasn't paying attention. I don't think there's anything malicious in it. It was, well, Tsunoda's at it as well, because Piastri came upon them while Colapinto and Tsunoda were fighting. Tsunoda kind of looked like he was going to tuck him behind Colapinto to give Piastri space, and then decided to jink out and make an overtake, and Piastri was like, oh God, I'm going 3 wide here. And then, Colapinto just moved across like he wasn't there. It was, really bad. Pretty, again, a sort of rookie error in that moment, I think.
I mean, it is, but the team have got to be with him at that point as well. Like, I'm not defending what Colapinto's done there by any stretch, but again, everyone knows I love using Emily as a yardstick for how obvious something is within the sport. But, you know, when she sat next to me and she turns to me and says, like, well, where's his engineer at? Like, where's his team radio at? Surely the radio guys should be telling him that someone's coming behind you to lap him. And, I mean, maybe they have. Maybe it's come early. Maybe it's come late. Maybe he's misunderstood. And I don't know. I can't think on behalf of Colapinto, and I can't read his mind. But it just feels like that should have definitely played out very differently. And even as a rookie at this level, that's the kind of thing that probably shouldn't be happening.
No, not at all.
I mean, imagine if that had been a Stroll or someone of this world, like they would be being drawn and quartered for that kind of move on somebody. So Colapinto's maybe getting away with it on the rookie principle. But yeah, not ideal to be running at the back and scrapping with Tsunoda and getting into those sort of scenarios when they've announced that he's on a race-to-race deal at this point. So they've confirmed that he will continue in the car, but on a race-to-race basis, which I guess is Alpine's way of just saying you're expendable at any point. Like, they're keeping him in there for some stability, but he's expendable at any point should the right deal come along for them.
And on that subject,
not going to
help. Alpine reserve Paul Aaron. He's going to be driving at Silverstone in FP1. However, weirdly, he's not going to be driving an Alpine. They've made a deal with Sauber, and he's going to be driving one of the Saubers at Silverstone and at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Which is slightly odd that, because I'm not sure what Alpine's situation is so far in terms of young driver appearances, but seems weird that they wouldn't be just using their reserve to, tick off their young driver appearances.
Well, I would say that maybe this problem comes from the fact that Sauber don't have anyone in their young driver lineup at the moment, realistically. So
I suppose
they've probably got nobody that qualifies. I'm trying to think who their reserve driver is, and off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you.
Sauber would normally use Ferrari reserves because of the engine deal.
True, yeah.
So you'd expect it to be one of the Ferraris, because like Sauber have obviously already ticked off 2 of theirs, because for the first 2 races, Bortoletto would have applied to the ruling.
Yeah. Yeah, and Doohan obviously applied to that car as well anyway, because
actually,
you had that whole thing of Doohan being replaced in Japan when it just wasn't necessary, because it didn't do anything for the quota. It would have been better replacing Gasly in that scenario. Trying to think who the current best reserve drivers are that would fit the bill. So Bogdanovic, maybe, or I don't even know who else.
Yeah, I'm not
There's
sure.
There's nobody else any higher than... There's a couple of Formula 3 drivers at the minute that are, I think, Ferrari linked, but main one's probably Bogdanovic, I think.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, so Alpine have only ticked off 2 of their 4 so far, and that is Doohan because he counted the first 2. No one's taken Gasly's car yet, so really weird that they're farming off one of theirs to Sauber. But
I mean, Aaron could essentially drive Gasly's at some point. There's nothing that would stop him from being able to do that. Maybe they just want him to have a go in the Sauber and get used to that before letting him loose in Gasly's car.
Yeah, maybe.
Seems odd.
Bit odd, though.
There you go. Yeah. A race that basically didn't exist next for Williams. I mean, Sainz didn't even make it to the start. Well, no, I lie. He made it to the grid, but then didn't make the race start. And then Albon, I wasn't very far into the race that he had to retire for some technical issues. Yeah, like he made like not even a third of the way through the race before he had to retire. So yeah, not a good weekend for them at all, especially going into a home Grand Prix at Silverstone. Is not the kind of weekend they want to be coming off.
They've.
I mean, Sainz has had a rough time the last 3 races in general, hasn't he?
Really
not just this one. Like the last few combined have been average at best. Well, probably not even average for Sainz, to be honest, at this point.
They've not said exactly what the issue was for Albon's car, but there was a suspicion that it was the same problem that he had in Canada. So if that is the case, they obviously still haven't fixed a lingering issue there. So yeah, not great from them.
Yeah, it's a weird scenario. I mean, a weird scenario is the fact that when he was struggling to get off the grid, everybody's just stood around watching it happen. And I get there's maybe some okay that's got to come from race control about if the marshals can get involved and stuff like that. But then it was like the rear brakes were essentially locked on and the whole thing catches fire by the time he gets back to the pit lane. Bit of a weird one overall. Leading to the aborted start and all the confusion with that, but strange times for Williams.
Didn't seem handled great by race control, that one.
No, I mean, it's a shame as well because James Vowles has just signed this new long-term deal with them to sort of show commitment. They're happy that they've seen good progress and so on, and then you get a weekend like this to celebrate. I mean, that's probably why that's happened. It's the curse of that deal, probably.
Yeah, probably.
You know what these things are like. So, yeah, probably to do with that. And then last one, I think, for the race, Yuki Tsunoda. So far off the pace in general, out in Q1.
I mean, the irony is he actually was probably the closest in qualifying he's been to Max. He was only, and I know it's time-wise, it's the shortest track on the calendar.
Yeah.
But even taking that into account, he was like 2.5 tenths off. Which is closer than he's been in a while. But
the problem is at any other circuit, that's going to be near a half a second, isn't it? I think, realistically.
Yeah, I've seen people trying to adjust it for track length a little bit, and he definitely is the closest he's been in a while, possibly ever. But when the field's this tight, like it was Q1, 9 tenths covered the entire field. So you've got to be on that pace. And he looked good. Again, he looked good all through practice as well. Like he was looking decent, and then it just all fell apart come qualifying again.
Got really, really scrappy then in the race, though. Maybe overdriving to compensate for the poor qualifying, but made contact with just about everybody he could, I think, at the back of the pack.
It was awful, yeah.
Most notably Stroll and the one with Colapinto. They were the main 2 big ones, but I wouldn't be surprised if he made contact with more people with the way he was driving. He was on the edge.
Yeah, I mean, the one with Stroll was not great, but not incredibly egregious, but it wasn't great.
Yeah, I mean, he's not getting a penalty for that, I don't think, realistically.
No.
The one on Colapinto, though, is definitely...
That was poor.
Yeah, just... I mean, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but it felt a little bit like the Russell incident there, either last year or the year before, whenever it was. It was within the last couple of years, where... you're kind of going for that gap up the inside, but knowing that the angle you've taken, you're kind of naturally going to sort of wash out and understeer out towards the outside. So knowing that you're not going to have the room, and it's not like the driver on the outside is not giving you any room, but trying to push it and gun it in that scenario, you are naturally probably going to drift wide with a little bit of understeer. So it felt very reminiscent of that situation. And I mean, a fairly deserved penalty, if you ask me. But
yeah, absolutely.
Although, weirdly, just let's talk about this a little bit, since we've talked about Colapinto's situation, now we're talking about Yuki. 10-second penalty for Yuki in that scenario, but only a 5-second penalty for Colapinto for the incident with Piastri.
Yeah,
I feel that's a little off. I feel that the Colapinto incident should realistically have been the same penalty as the Yuki Tsunoda one. And part of me, conspiracy cap on, where's my Red Bull conspiracy cap? But conspiracy theory part of me wants to say that the reason Colapinto was only given 5 seconds for that incident compared to Yuki's 10 was to allow for Colapinto to still have a 5-second advantage for the early incident. And rather than putting him back on level pegging, especially considering at that point Yuki had just got past Colapinto. I don't know. That's conspiracy madness, but
it felt a bit to me just like
policing the outcome kind of thing.
Yeah, not the
sort of thing.
Yeah, that's definitely what it felt like to me.
Yeah. Right. I think at that point we have analysed more than enough to select the driver of the day. So I know this is going to turn into an argument. So go on, Chris. Tell us your situation.
Those listeners who are in our Discord on Sunday will remember me saying something to the effect of Bortoletto is driver of the day and anybody who disagrees can fight me. Now, maybe I was a bit excited. Maybe I was a little excited in the moment. Maybe it was the very strong painkillers I've been taking for the last few days and the lack of sleep I've been getting. But in hindsight, as much as I like Bortoletto and as good a drive as that was, I actually don't think he is driver of the day.
So you're going to agree with me that it's Nico Hulkenberg, right?
20th to 9th, did he finish, I think?
Yes.
20th to 9th is an unbelievable drive from Hulkenberg. I mean, honourable mention to Bortoletto for sure. Really, really good drive from him. Lawson, honourable mention.
Yeah.
Great drive from him. Lando for soaking up that pressure and holding on to the win. But I think it does have to be Hulk.
Nico Hulkenberg. Yes. Honestly, Hulk is my fave. I don't know why. I don't know what it is about him.
He just seems great.
I've just always loved the guy, and I will continue to love the guy. And
I desperately hope this Audi thing works out for him.
Yeah,
my worry is that he's gonna not be there long enough to see the fruits of the project, and he'll never end up getting that podium that he so deserves. But I really hope it works out for him.
I could die happy knowing I've at least seen him win Le Mans. But I would love to see him win or at least be on a podium in Formula One.
Yeah.
That would be amazing to see just because I love the guy. But yeah, I'm happy we can now agree.
Yeah.
Move of the day. This might be an opportunity for you to resubmit Bortoletto, though.
Yeah, I mean, Bortoletto did make a good pass on Gasly down into turn 4, but Gasly was on very old soft tyres at the time, so that takes away from it a little bit. We had a lot of very similar passes up into turn 3.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing into turn 3 that became move of the day, even though it wasn't the move itself. And I think you might agree with me on this, but Norris's very clever switch back when defending from Piastri, sort of seeing an opportunity to let the position go into turn 3, knowing that if he did it in the right manner, he could get that switch back, get the DRS on the run to turn 4 and take the place back.
Yeah.
Very clever driving. Something that I feel like we've been relatively fair in criticising Norris for lacking at times. Seems definitely more capable of it defending on this account rather than attacking. Like whether he'd have seen that play out differently if attacking, but if he can get to the front and then keep a position by defending to that standard, he's still going to win races. Yeah. He's just got to get the qualifying done and keep the position off the front of the grid. But yeah, I think definitely worth a mention, if not a contender.
Did you notice as well? So he was passed by Piastri into turn 3, and then did the cut back to get alongside, but he was behind, so he got DRS for the following straight. But did you notice his DRS closed way too early?
Oh no, I did not pay that
About
close
two
attention.
thirds of the way down the straight, if you watched, his DRS closes, opens again, then closes again. So he didn't even have his DRS open for the full time he should have done, and still managed to nail the repass. I don't know if that was just his, he knocked the button by mistake, or whether he had a DRS issue. But yeah,
I'm going to
weird
go
on
watch that back now. Now you've pointed that
that.
out. Interesting. Is it move of the day though?
I think it is. Yeah, I think as you say, the positioning of his car to generate the ability to make that repass was super impressive.
That's fair. And then last one for this week.
Honestly, what the are we doing here?
You've put one here that I forgot about.
Have I? Is that the
Yes.
pre-national anthem interpretive dance?
Yeah, that
showcase.
That was something, eh?
I mean, as I said in the Discord at the time, I literally just said WTF.
Yeah.
But the obviously more complete version that I will not repeat now. Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah. Not quite
national
sure
anthems can sometimes be pretty weird. And weirdly, Austria does tend to be one of those races where you do get these extravagant performances. I mean, sometimes they work out for the best. Sometimes they work out a little weird, but...
Was it last year we had Hans Zimmer just jamming away on an electric guitar for the anthem, or was that a couple of years ago?
Hans Zimmer?
Yeah.
No way. I don't remember it being Hans.
Yeah, Hans was there
a year
or two ago.
That. Oh, wow.
Very odd.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely had a year of some sort of rock representation of the national anthem in Austria. But yeah, this one was a little bit of a weird one. I mean, there's that. There's the thing we've already talked about with Carlos on the grid, with everyone just standing around looking at him. Like I say, I get that there is a prospect of they're maybe not allowed to stand on, but surely from race control, they should be saying, like, go help the car get moving or something like that.
It's how long it took to abort the start as well, because
the cars were coming around the last couple of corners. Out of 6 into 7 or something at the time that they officially aborted it.
Most of the teams still had people stood on the wrong side of the track because they can't cross back over until all the cars have gone. It's like obviously going to be an aborted start. Yeah, bit weird that.
Yeah. What else is there? There's the whole Colapinto thing of nearly running... Yeah. Well, he did literally run Oscar off the road, but nearly running him into a barrier as well. And then a quirky little one that you spotted during the closing ceremonies of Bernie Ecclestone popping up on the podium.
Where's he suddenly appeared from? He don't see much in these days, but not quite sure why he was there.
Oh, Sarah's just thrown a good one into live chat. The crane carrying the F2 car after that incident in F2 just completely smashing down an advertising barrier. An advertising bridge. I guess it wasn't a bridge, was it? It was one of those over-track hoarding things. But
memories of Baku a number of years ago.
Yeah, I feel like this one's worse than Baku, to be fair.
At least in this one, the car didn't get covered in pneumatic fluid.
Very true.
That's the one advantage here.
Very true. How are we going to narrow this down, Chris?
I'm tempted to give this one to Colapinto because that was... In the spirit of the award, that one definitely made everybody say, what the is he doing?
I'd agree. I'm happy with giving it to that.
Cool.
Okay. I will do a little bit of a predictions and fantasy roundup at this point then. So... overall, not a great weekend for many people. We got about 6 people with a joint best score of 3 out of 5. So not huge numbers this weekend, but I feel like that shows either a lack of faith in Lando Norris or people just having a tough weekend when it comes to first DNF. Although some people did go with Antonelli, some people did get 16 finishes right. So it's not like it wasn't guessed at all. But yeah, not a great weekend overall in predictions for most people. Gordon Barham is still our overall leader with 18 points, but only by 1. The next people in second are, I think there's a couple tied with 17 points just behind Gordon, so that gap is coming down a little bit. Over in the official F1 fantasy game, our leader from the overall standings, Wyan Racing, won this weekend as well to extend their lead a little bit. So 316 points for Ryan this weekend and 2,633 overall at the top. And then in GridRival, Max Verstappen scored 1,020 points to win this weekend. But we have new leaders. Klaxon alert.
Ooh.
Sazo123 is now our overall leader with 10,385 points. But not one, but two people have overtaken Krusty Onion, and Noonish Silverstonians are now in second place with 10,368 points. So less than 20 points between the top two in a fantasy league where scoring 1,000 points is a good week. So to be within 20 points of each other in that scenario is pretty crazy. But yeah, congrats to both of you for overtaking Krusty Onion. And Krusty Onion, it's been a good lead, but you need to pull something back, I'm afraid. Can't be letting this lie. If you want to find out how to get involved with any of the predictions or the fantasy league games or anything like that and submit your teams to our leagues, head to backofthegrid.com. You can register for the for the predictions league there and start submitting your predictions for Silverstone, which we'll be covering in just a moment. And if you want to get involved with those fantasy leagues, there's links to both of those that we've talked about. And we're also doing a GridRival IndyCar league this year. So if you want to submit your team for that, you are welcome to do so there as well. Right, that's that bit done. I guess we do have to look ahead to Silverstone. We've mentioned it a few times already, but I think we've got one or two or maybe more storylines to run through before we go into predictions.
We'll keep it fairly brief. We've already kind of done a bit about the weather and can anyone beat McLaren if it's sunny? Probably not. But yeah, we mentioned Hamilton earlier on and whether he can get his first Ferrari podium at his home race. Hamilton's record at Silverstone, starting last year and going back, first, third, first, second, first, second, first. And you have to go all the way back to 2013 for the last time he wasn't on the podium, and he came fourth. And that was his first year with Mercedes. I don't think there's a driver that has a better record at a single track than Hamilton at Silverstone. If there's anywhere he's going to pick up that first Ferrari podium, it feels like it's going to be here. And, you know, if the upgrades we've seen this last weekend are as good as they seem and do translate to other tracks, I think it's entirely possible he could pull it off.
I kind of want the rain that we talked about earlier, because I think that's an opportunity for Lewis to win this one.
I mean, look at last year. Like, the rain came down and he just kind of schooled everyone. McLaren were running away 1-2 with that at one point, and then the rain came and everyone lost their heads and Hamilton just, kept it together and pulled off that win. I'd love to see him on the podium. It'd be really great.
Definitely. I'd agree with that.
The only other thing I've mentioned that we've not already talked about is I'm really interested to see how Sauber get on and whether they are genuinely up there in the midfield points fight now, or if this again was just Austria's a pretty unique track and it was pretty unique conditions. So I'd like to see them still in that fight.
Yeah, before truly answering the question of are they now going to be competitive, what I'd probably like to do is kind of go analyse their average pace through the back end of that lap, 5, 6, 7, 8, essentially. Like that sort of high speed flowing sections. Because if they were strong there and that's where their pace was when you analyse it, then I would say they've got a pretty good chance of being in amongst it again at Silverstone because of the kind of circuit that Silverstone is, a lot of flowing high speed stuff. And I think this is probably why Hamilton's always excelled there, because it is about that, pardon the cliche, but that being one with the car and, the flow of the circuit essentially, for the most part. And that combined with, I guess, being a home race for him is just that thing that always helps add time to, or remove time from people's laps. But yeah, I do think if that is where Sauber was strong when you analyse it, you would probably expect them to have a decent finish in Silverstone. If they were more competitive in the first half of the lap, and that's where the pace was coming from, I'd maybe expect not as
Maybe
great
less
a
so.
performance at Silverstone, but maybe better performances in places like Baku and Monza and places like that is maybe where you'd see this performance coming back to them.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Right. Should we do some predictions?
Yeah, I think we should probably do some predictions from this. I know where I'm going to go with both fastest in Q3 and race winner. Have you thought about it that deeply yet?
I also know where I'm going, and I wonder if we're both going the same.
Okay, what's your fastest in Q3?
Norris.
Yeah, we said it together. Okay, so we're both saying the same there. We're both saying Norris. On 3, who is your race winner?
This is where we find out how bad our delay is between us.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Lewis
Norris.
Hamilton.
Ooh.
Oh.
He's going for it.
I'm going for the weather, man. We talked about it before.
I'd love you to be right. I would love you to be right.
I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for the weather plays havoc on race day, and Hamilton does it. It's one of those things where I don't get to score many points in Predictions League because we do it so early in the week, and you don't really see the true pace of people on track at all at this point. So
just get to have some fun.
I just get to throw something out there, and if that sticks and comes off, I can look like I've got some sort of foresight ability.
I like it.
First DNF. What are you going with there, Chris?
I'm going to say Albon. Williams are having a rough run, so I'm going to keep that going.
Okay. I'm trying to think where I'd go with this. I'm going to be... I feel like I'm being mean, but I'm just going to say Oliver Behrman. I feel like it's that whole home race case, and I don't want to say either Norris or Hamilton because I want them to be in the mix for the front. So we'll see. What about number of finishes?
We both massively overestimated for Austria, so I'm going to go a bit lower this time and say 17.
I'm going to go with my philosophy of it shall rain. So I'm going to go even lower than that and go with a few like incidents and spins into gravel or just collisions between people due to the weather. And I'm going to say 15. I'm going to go a little low.
Goodness.
And then to add complete spice to the mix, I swear this is not fixed and it is drawn at random. George Russell is our random driver for Silverstone.
That's so hard because if it does stay dry and it's warm, he's going to be nowhere. And if it does rain, he's probably going to do better. So, I'm going to go for 5th, I think.
Okay. I'm going to stick to my philosophy of it shall rain. So I'm banking a lot on this. But I'm going to go, get this. This is where everyone can throw the British bias straight at me. All British podium. Hamilton wins it. Norris comes home in second and Russell's third.
Bold.
All British podium. And whilst deciding that's where I was going, I decided to Google the term all British F1 podium and find out from a Google AI overview that the last all British Formula One podium occurred at the 1968 US Grand Prix in Watkins Glen. That was Graham Hill, Jackie Stewart, and Dan Gurney.
Oof, what a podium that is.
Yeah. So, let's have it again. It's been long enough. 60 years nearly. So, that's it. That's our predictions. Feel free to fight me in the comments. I don't care. Because we all know that I've gone pure fantasy on this particular aspect, but that's fine. If you want to join and submit yours, as I said earlier, please head to backtothegrid.com and all the info is there. With that being said, we've got a couple of little bits of inbox to see us out.
Is Kimi saying now? But stay out.
Box.
Hey man.
First one this week from Alan Gardiner, who says, "Will we see Ricciardo back in the Red Bull at Silverstone?"
As
Obviously, that's a
entertaining
reference
as that'd
to
be.
a few years ago when he had that private test before he made his comeback because the Red Bull driver situation was a hot mess.
Maybe.
No, I think is the short answer.
Yeah, I think as well, it wouldn't be that funny for Yuki Tsunoda, but as comical as it may have been overall, I don't think we'll see that one, I'm afraid, Alan.
No, I think he's done.
Yeah. Kilowog has an equally out there but interesting question. Why are Mercedes so eager to swap Max for George? Respect to the 4-time champ, but George has been a problem for Max whenever they've remotely had equivalent machinery. George has wanted to drive for Mercedes since it's been a thing and has been so loyal to both... and been loyal to... Wait, hang on. No, I'm reading this wrong. And being both loyal and objectively excellent. There we go, I got it out eventually. He even beat Lewis on merit one season as well. What am I missing in this scenario, says Kilowog.
It's a good point. Like, Toto does seem to continue to kind of court Verstappen, and the general belief is that if that did happen, it would be George that would make way for him, not Antonelli, with Antonelli being seen as kind of the future of that team. I think for me, it's one of two things. It's either Toto never quite getting over the fact that he lost Verstappen, because easy to forget that Verstappen was at one point affiliated with Mercedes. Mercedes said, we'll give you I think they wanted to send him to F2 or F3 and we'll give you a F1 seat in a couple of years' time. And Red Bull said, we'll give you a seat now, and he jumped ship. So maybe it's Toto just never quite getting over that and wanting to sort of make up for it. It's also entirely possible that this is all just Toto rocking the boat and trying to create unrest at Red Bull and actually having no intention of changing the driver lineup whatsoever. Yeah, I think it would be incredibly harsh on Russell if he did end up losing that seat. Because I think he has, as Killock says, he's waited for it, he's earned it, and he's been doing a very, very good job in it. Russell's driving so well this year.
Yeah, I mean, the joke is obviously, or the banter line, whatever you want to call it, is like he's pretty consistent, he's Mr. Consistent. But when you do look at the results that he picks up, like considering that's not the best car on the grid, he is winning races by capitalising on the mistakes of others. Or, I mean, to be fair, Canada was purely on merit. Like, the car was performing there, but there's other situations where he picks up wins or he picks up quality podiums where it's him just being in the right place consistently all the time, so that when things do fall apart ahead of him for other drivers, he's always there picking up those podiums. And he's done that pretty much throughout his Mercedes career, more or less. So, yeah, I think especially while they've got someone as junior as Kimi Antonelli in the other car, it seems a bit unwise to be almost shunning Russell the way that it feels like they are.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, if you've got the opportunity to put a multiple world champion, proven generational talent in your car, are you going to miss taking that opportunity? Like, look at Ferrari and Hamilton. You know, they saw an opportunity to get Hamilton in that car and they took it with both hands, because why wouldn't you? And yeah, fair enough, that one's not come fully to fruition yet, but given the right set of circumstances this weekend, he'll have a win under his belt for Ferrari. Like, realistically, like, predictions, banter, joking aside, like, given the right set of circumstances, Hamilton will win with that Ferrari on Sunday. Like I say, he needs things to play his way, but he will get there. And I think you could say the same about Max and Mercedes. Like, we look at where the Red Bull is right now and where we ultimately think it is, especially when you look at the likes of Lawson's results and Tsunoda's results in the car, And then you think where the Mercedes is fairly consistently, you can't help but think if Max was in that Mercedes, he'd potentially be winning every other race. But
Yeah.
you don't know. It's all hypothetical, but you can understand why Mercedes are looking at him in that regard.
I still think the most likely outcome is that Max stays at Red Bull for one more year, sees how the new regulations pan out, and then makes his move. Because at that point, he can have his pick of teams. Like we've said this before, probably McLaren aside, I think Verstappen could basically go and knock on the door of any team he wanted to, and they'd find a way to make space for him. Yeah. So I think
it's like that Hamilton situation. Like if there's probably two drivers on that grid that if they basically said, "I want to move teams," who's interested? All the teams on the grid would be interested, regardless. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Honestly, I think probably the only team who are so happy with their driver lineup that they wouldn't take an opportunity at either Hamilton or Verstappen is McLaren. And that's just because they're pretty sold on the pairing they've got right now. And they
even
can see
Ferrari,
I
think, would have to think long and hard about it. They're probably the second least likely to change, but even then they wouldn't.
Can you imagine a world in which Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton are teammates at Ferrari?
At that point, all bets are off if that ever happens.
That would be incredible. I would pay good money to see that. I'd become a Ferrari fan to watch that. I would genuinely convert. Make it happen, Ferrari. Make it happen.
Please don't.
That is it. That is a note to end on. If that was it, that is the one. If you have any interest in the F1 movie and we would like to know Chris and I's thoughts on the F1 movie, please do go check out our review. We posted it this weekend, so we both went and saw it during release week. Put a little something together over the weekend and put that out. So some of you may have already seen it. I know a few people have left comments on it and sent us messages about it. So thank you very much for all that feedback. It's appreciated when we do something a little bit different, seeing all your supportive comments and interesting takes on the same sort of thing and the same topic.
And really interested to hear what people think of the film as well.
Yeah, exactly. We without spoiling it, we've gone into detail on both very general spoiler-free topics. So if you've not seen it yet, but you intend to, you can definitely get away with listening to or watching the first half of that. And we're very clear about when we're about to dip into spoilers. So you know that you can bow out. But then if you've already watched it and you just want to see what we thought of the nitty-gritty detail of it, feel free to check out the whole thing. So that's there. If you want to reach out to us in general, whether it's questions for inbox or comments about the movie, like just sharing your comments on that, whatever it might be, you can reach us on all the social platforms by looking at Back of the Grid, or you can drop us a direct message through the website by heading to backofthegrid.com and filling out the little contact form there. And of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can like, share, subscribe, and of course, leave comments and all that jazz. We will be back in a week's time to cover Silverstone. And I am off to do a few rain dances so that I can get my predictions right for once. Bye, everyone.
Bye.